Okay.
Good morning. Welcome to Contemporary Issues. Nice to have you all here today. Excuse me. And Rev Barb Sholis joining us so we can get to know Barb a little bit. And we're going to ask Barb about all kinds of things. Just tell us that she grew up in Kentucky and Southern Baptist and was recently senior pastor of Parker United Methodist. So she'll tell a little about that and ministry. So we'll have a good informal conversation today. But before we start, our usual announcement, Zoomers, welcome, and please mute yourself in the lower left corner of your screen when you're not speaking. And we are recording this for future playback. And any other announcements? Hope everybody made it through the tornado okay. Our once in a generation tornado in downtown Highlands Ranch. Bart, was the church here damaged? Did we have any roof damage?
A little bit of roof damage. I saw some tarp when I came in this morning.
I forgot to ask before.
Yeah, and some trees and shrubs, things like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And Susie, yes.
I was receptioning on Thursday afternoon.
Oh, tell us.
It wasn't my job, it was Joyce. She was having a good time on a trip. So I thought, there's gonna be a lot of hail and I have a new car. So at 3:30,
Yeah.
I said, I'm leaving now. So, tornado. I said, well, I don't live that far. I got out onto Highlands Ranch Parkway and oh my God, that was when it hit at 3:30.
Oh, my goodness.
There were hardly any cars. You know, there's nowhere to pull over and, you know, someone would hit you if you did. So I live on Broadway in Highlands Ranch Parkway, but it takes me that long, you know, I was driving like this and it was scary. I thought, oh, I should have listened to them. But it just came so fast.
Yes.
And when I walked out, there was just sprinkles, you know, some big sprinkles. And then once I got to Highlands Ranch Parkway, it was strange because it was really bad rain and then it wasn't as bad. And then it was really bad rain again. So it was odd because I'd never been obviously in a tornado before.
When there's hail, there's always a hesitation with the updraft as the
Oh,
water goes.
is that, yeah.
As the small hail goes back up into the cloud, there's like that, everything stops for a second.
Yeah, it stopped for a couple of seconds and then
Yeah.
it was hard for me to turn.
Then it comes down.
Turn, you know, on the bridge line and I'm like, thank God there was nobody but me out there.
Yeah.
Levon, did you get damage?
I was lucky, yeah.
You're right
Got a
there.
shingles up but my development's just a few blocks
Yeah.
away and the ones on the west side, they got it. Windows, patio glass doors exploded and fences down, roof, yeah, it was not bad.
Were you
I was
home?
lucky,
Were you home?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Did you hear a noise? Did you hear anything? So because I lived through the tornado outbreak in 1974 that hit Kentucky, Ohio. Remember, Xenia, Ohio was flattened, Brandenburg. And you could hear, it sounded like
Yeah,
it was the most frightening noise I've ever heard.
I didn't hear any noise.
Yeah, I just wondered.
Well, we're just lucky it wasn't a Midwest or Southern
Yes.
traditional tornado knocking down houses and everything, but
Yeah.
unusual for us. Yeah. And if anybody doesn't know Susan or anybody from out of town on Zoom, yeah, we had a tornado in Highlands Ranch that was on the ground for a little while, knocked down lots of trees and fences and roofs. Some people lost roofs, but no
EF1.
injuries. An EF1.
Yeah.
Yeah, very rare here, but exciting. Okay, anything else in the news or announcements of things going on? Vicky and I had a great time last night. We went to a concert in Boulder. Graham Nash from Crosby, Stills and Nash, and it was wonderful. He played their hits and he's 81, he's still making music and albums, and an old hippie, yeah. And there were lots of old hippies there, yeah. But it was fun, and yeah, ask your smart speaker to play Graham Nash's latest album, and it'll just play it for you.
His voice still good?
His voice is still good, so I wanted to share,
It's still
yeah.
the high notes?
Yeah.
not so much good on the high notes, but it was good.
Earplugs in. He was good.
He had a loud electric guitarist, but yeah, it was fun. I wanted to share that with you too. So nice to see the folks who are in their 80s, the old rockers still going. Yeah, yeah, it's fun. Okay, we want to give plenty of time to talk with Barb. I want to introduce Barb a little bit and tell about that she grew up in Kentucky, Southern Baptist, had a journey to the progressive side over her life, as many of us have here. Before coming here, she was senior pastor of Parker United Methodist from 2018 to 2022. Prior to that, she was executive assistant to the UMC bishop in Ohio, and she attended Capital University in Columbus and Methodist Theological School in Ohio. Is the specific name of it. And so with that, we are just going to ask Barb to tell us a little bit about what she's done in the past in her journey, and what she's doing here as pastor of senior ministries. So we can learn a little bit about what the current things are going on here and the Windcrest outreach that she's doing also. So welcome, Barb.
Thank you, thank you. Well, as Steve said, I am a native of Louisville, Kentucky, and grew up there. My husband as well. My husband's not here today. He is, may I say, at home cutting the grass. Because it needs it.
Because it's dry.
Because it's dry, it's not raining. So anyway, born in Louisville, I am one of 3 children. I'm the tortured middle child, and I have an older brother and a younger sister. My brother still lives in Louisville. My sister has lived in Kansas City for a number of years, and so I started out working. Actually, my parents owned an art gallery in downtown Louisville, and I worked for them a number of years. I grew up Southern Baptist, as Steve said. I grew up at Crescent Hill Baptist Church in Louisville, Kentucky. And it was the church that was closest to the Southern Theological Seminary, which was also Southern Baptist. So the seminary was in our neighborhood and was a kind of key place where we hung out as kids. We played tennis on their tennis courts. We'd sled down their hills in the winter. And many of the professors at Southern Baptist also went to Crescent Hill. That was back in the day when the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary was moderate. I grew up, my childhood minister was Dr. John Claypool. He was absolutely wonderful and well-known minister in the Southern Baptist denomination. He was also the state representative for the NAACP's during the civil rights. He was a contemporary of Martin Luther King's. I actually, in my office at home, have a picture of Dr. Claypool and Martin Luther King and a couple of the other Southern Leadership Conference folks meeting in downtown Louisville. I can remember the 60s and Dr. Claypool getting quite a lot of flack from some of the leadership at the Baptist Church where I grew up. And of course, I was not really old enough to understand what they were upset about. But having your young white minister on the front page of the Louisville Courier Journal with Dr. King in about 1963 was a big deal. So I grew up within this Southern Baptist church that on the one hand followed the Baptist theology, but on the other hand was what I would say moderate. Dr. Claypool, I guess I was in probably 10th grade. Their youngest daughter died from leukemia, and it was experience the whole church went through. And from that point, Dr. Claypool wrote a book called Tracks of a Fellow Struggler. I tell you all this because throughout my call in my life as a minister, my childhood minister was a big influence on who I've become in ministry. And so if you ever have a chance to read any of Dr. Claypool's books, he passed away in 2007 from multiple myeloma, but he really, his books are wonderful, and I would encourage you to read them, a couple of them anyway. So from there, graduated from high school, wasn't ready to go to college yet. So I worked for my parents in their gallery for a couple of years. And then I went to work for the Louisville Tourist Bureau, which was really fun because I was 19 and 20 and I got to travel and host as a sponsor of the city of Louisville, and spent a couple of months in Toronto, Canada. And that was kind of a real eye-opener for me. After that, I decided, began to think I want to go into some kind of journalism because writing was my joy. And so I started at University of Kentucky, then my husband and I got married and I transferred. He's a little bit older than me. I was a child bride. No, he's 6 years older than me. And he was already, he had already been in the service, been to, had a master's in hospital administration and was in Montgomery, Alabama as a hospital administrator at the Baptist Hospital down there. We got married. I transferred to Auburn and worked in TV, my background, and I was going to school for TV journalism, broadcast journalism, not newspaper journalism. Got a internship at the CBS affiliate in Montgomery, Alabama, and from there took off and began to work full-time and go to school part-time. So I worked for the CBS affiliate for 3 years, and then we moved to Columbus, Ohio. And I figured out I was never going to be the next Jane Pauley. So, and at that point I had a 6-month-old daughter, and so I decided I wanted to spend some time being mom. I still had a little less than a year to go on my undergrad degree. So I tried to transfer to Ohio State, but they didn't want my credits. So they would take them as electives. So I said phooey on that. And I went to Capital University, which is a good little Lutheran school in Columbus, Ohio, graduated from there. Now, being a Lutheran school, they required 2 religion courses. I have to tell you that when I was probably about 13, my dad had a kind of falling out with the church. And so he quit going, so we all quit going. And I hadn't been part of a church existence, church family for probably 10 years. So here I take these religion courses at Capital, and something goes ding, ding, ding. And the first was just really an overview of the Bible. The second, I did an independent study on the life of Thomas Merton. And I did that because I chose that because my father had all these Merton books. He had Bonhoeffer, St. John of the Cross. He was really a seeker, and he had gotten frustrated with church. And so he had dropped out, but he was still engaged in seeking. So, so I said, okay, my dad reads this guy, Thomas Merton, I'll read him too. Little did I know what I was getting into, because Thomas Merton is not an easy read. But it was a fascinating experience. It was very mystical for me. I had a dream one night. This was during this independent study, right before I was graduating. I had a dream that I was at Bellarmine College, which is in Louisville, and they have a Thomas Merton library. And I'm in the dream, and they do in real life. So in the dream, I'm in this library, standing with my dad, looking in these kind of glass display cases. And all of a sudden, I feel this hand on my shoulder. And I look around and it's Thomas Merton. So, lo and behold, that was a freaky dream for me. But I kind of stored it over here and left it alone. Toward the end of my independent study, my Dr. Bill Castro said, he was overseeing my study, said, have you ever thought about going to seminary? Like, what? No. And he said, I think you should think about it. And I said, well, to do what? I mean, I grew up Southern Baptist. I never had women in ministry as role models, maybe education directors or something like that, although they can't do it anymore now because of the Southern Baptist. But so anyway, he said, just think about it. So I did, being a reporter type, I did a lot of research and exploration around it. And I thought, well, my background is in writing. I do have this kind of movement toward religion, toward this spiritual pull, this urge. It's God speaking to me, but I'm not listening. And so I thought, okay, I'll be a curriculum writer. So I go to seminary, and the first time I served, helped officiate communion, this little voice said, see. And the next time when I took a preaching class, it was wonderful. And every point where I had a wall, God kind of nudged me through it. And then got to the other side of it. I went to a high school reunion. I thought I was kind of a wild child in high school. And so I can remember saying to a couple people, they'd say, well, what are you doing? And I'd say, well, I'm studying to be a minister. And I thought they'd go, what? And they said, well, I can see that. And so I'm getting all these outside things. I'm still not believing it myself, but I'm getting all these outside nudges. And then at some point, it just began to feel like I was in my own skin. It was a call. And as much as I kept trying to push it away, I would continue to have these experiences. So I got appointed my last year of seminary to a large church in Worthington, Ohio, which is a suburb of Columbus, served as an associate for 10 years. Wonderful experience for me. In 2003, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So I went through the whole bit, surgery, chemo, radiation, drugs after that. But the church was incredibly supportive. I was an associate at the time, and they had worked it so that my one good week out of the month, I got to preach. So I went in there. It was probably 6 weeks after I'd started chemo, and my hair was gone at that point. And so I told my senior minister, I said, I'm going to preach with ball cap on. Is that okay? And he's like, yeah, sure. So I come in that morning and everyone in the congregation had ball caps on. It was so great. It was so great. So that was one of those places where I really understood the importance of Christian community, how important community is in our lives. And the way that they surrounded me and loved on me that period, it was wonderful. I got reappointed a little bit after that, about a year and a half after that, and went to a county seat church right outside of Columbus. Most of my ministry was in Central Ohio. I served as the first female senior minister at a 1,000-member church that was 200 years old. So it was, okay, here's change. And there were people that left, and there were people that were, didn't believe women should lead in ministry. But the church did well. I was there for 7 years, then became a district superintendent in Columbus area, served in that for 2 years, and then was appointed as the bishop's assistant for 6 years. And that was an interesting experience. It was primarily administrative. I worked with Bishop Gregory Palmer, who is just the bomb. He's just wonderful. And he'll be retiring next year, so I'll be going back for that. But we're the exact same age, so we had a lot in common in that way. He's African American, working alongside an African American man. This was the second time I had done it. The first time was when I was a TV news reporter in Montgomery, Alabama, when I was 26 years old, and I had a 29-year-old cameraman, black cameraman in Montgomery, Alabama. And one of the stories that we covered was the anniversary of the March on Selma, and the KKK. Of course, you remember the March in Selma, they were coming to Montgomery, state capitol. Well, this was a reverse march with the KKK leaving from Montgomery, going to Selma. And Jimmy Johnson and I covered it, which was quite exciting. I was too stupid to be here. It was quite exciting time for me. And I just thought, I'm out there on the edge of it until we were confronted, and then it got scary.
Was that on the Pettus Bridge?
Yes, yes,
So,
yeah. So they hadn't made it to Selma yet. They were leaving from Montgomery, marching the other way to take back Selma or something. I don't know what they were doing, but I do remember the experience. Another experience I had with Jimmy, which is one of the stories of my life that has shaped me, is we were covering a story. We had gotten a message over the radio that there had been a body found in a house, and that he wanted us to go there. So we took off. We were going there, and I wasn't sure where it was. Jimmy was driving, and he said, "I know where it is." And so we left downtown Montgomery, and we're out on the edge of town, and it was like gravel roads, and just some real, I don't want to say it was a shanty town, but these houses were put together with not much. They had outdoor plumbing still, and this was 1979. So we get there, and apparently an older woman had come home from church that Sunday, and somebody followed her home, and they went in the house and basically robbed her and left her, and she died. And so Jimmy and I went. I remember going up on the porch, opening the door. It was, the middle of summer in Montgomery, Alabama. It's 90 some odd degrees. The humidity is probably 90%. And it was just, the stench was awful. I thought I was going to get sick. So I went and sat down on the grass by the car. And so Jimmy came out to check on me. And all of a sudden this truck starts coming. It's like an old pickup truck. And in the back, it has watermelons.
Oh.
And so I say to Jimmy, because that's how it was, "Jimmy, I need to ask you a question." I said, "Why do postcards in Stuckey's," anybody know what Stuckey's is?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. "Why do postcards in Stuckey's have pictures of little black children with watermelon? Can you explain that to me?" And then I thought, oh no, I said the wrong thing. But he put his camera in the trunk. He went over, he said, "Come with me." So we went over to the truck. The guy's in there, and people are coming out, and they're purchasing halves or whole watermelon. And so he gets a half, and then he asks the guy to split it in half. And so we go and we sit on the grass together, and we just, we're eating our watermelon, and he's just being quiet. And then finally he goes, "It's wet, it's cool, it's tasty, it's cheap. I don't have any air conditioning. And I don't even have a fan. And so he's telling me this is something that's a treat. Now, I since did a little research on that and realized that after the Civil War, some of the freed slaves began to make money by growing watermelons and selling them. And then it became kind of this caricature of African Americans at the turn of the century. And you'll see it in music, you'll see it in some of the vaudeville, you'll see it in all kinds of things. And it became a way to really degrade Black people, but it was actually a way in the beginning that they started to make a life for themselves. And so, that was one of those stories, but as we sat there, and when I preached about this story once, I said, I've never had sweeter communion than that watermelon that day. It was a powerful experience. So that was one of my stories from when I was a news reporter, but back to the United Methodist Church. I have to say, my husband was a cradle Methodist. And when we got married, he said, "You saw the light." But when we moved to Columbus, Ohio, there was a really good United Methodist church in our neighborhood, and our daughter needed to be baptized. And so we took her there and actually got involved in things that snowballed from there. When I was the bishop's assistant, two things I had responsibility for. I sat on the cabinet, I oversaw annual conference, and I worked with clergy that got in trouble. So that was a lot of fun. So I did that for 6 years, did a lot of traveling, loved the job, but in the meantime, our daughter and granddaughter had moved out here. My daughter was going through an awful divorce, and so I said to Bishop Palmer, "Is it okay if I talk to Bishop Karen if there's anything available out here?" So I waited about 1.5 years, and then they called me about Parker and said, the senior minister at Parker's retiring, and would this be a place you'd be interested in? And I've told the Parker folks a story, an interesting story. I was out, because they were out here, I was flying out here 3 or 4 times a year. Anybody know that grandma experience of? So one time my daughter had a doctor's appointment. They lived in up close to Greenwood Village, but she had a doctor's appointment or some kind of appointment in Parker on Main Street. So my granddaughter at the time was probably about 4. And I said, "Okay, you go to your appointment, we'll go to the playground." So we're at the playground, big playground in Main Street, Parker. My granddaughter says, I'm hungry. And of course, she being 4 years old only wants to eat certain things. So we get in the car, we're driving one way, and she wants Wendy's, and I realize as I'm going the wrong way, it must be the other way. So I go up the hill, and I turn around in Parker United Methodist driveway. And I think to myself, well, this would be an okay church. And ding, 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 1.5 years later, there I was. So it was crazy. It was crazy. I served at Parker. I told them they have this one wall. We created this history wall that's really nice there, but they have pictures of their former pastors there. And they kept bugging me after I retired. "We need a picture." And so I finally got a picture of my husband and I took it down. I said, "Here's what I want you to put underneath it. This is the pandemic pastor." Because I was there a year. I came in 2018, was there during the 2019 conversation about with General Conference, the special General Conference, and all that meant. And then we got into COVID. So it was quite the 2 years there with COVID and the 2 years otherwise. I loved serving Parker. And Parker is a very complicated church. In a lot of ways.
How large is it?
Well, that's a good question now. So when I came, there were about 575 in worship. And they have not come all the way back since COVID. Although they have a good online presence. But the bigger thing is, Parker is what I would call a centrist church with conservatives and progressives and people right in the middle on social issues and theological issues. However, this past year, the senior minister that was there before I was, there was some of the leadership left Parker, coaxed him into creating a new fellowship and pulled 100 people out of Parker. So, and that came after the leadership board and the church decided they were not going to leave the United Methodist Church. So now the good news is, I think there's less friction on a Sunday morning there now because a lot of the people that were that really didn't want to stay United Methodist left. So
Sounds very Baptist.
it's you know what, it sounds very Acts to me. I've just finished teaching Acts, the book of Acts, and we have our last class at Windcrest this week. And there's nothing like studying the book of Acts to realize there's nothing new under the sun, because as Paul went around the Mediterranean and Asia Minor, in all the settings, some of the same stuff was happening. So maybe a little bit different twist on it, but it was pretty much the same. So yeah.
Just a time check. We've got about 25 minutes left. Tell us what you're doing at Windcrest.
All right.
And overall, your job here with senior minister.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I'd like to answer a question.
Sure.
Southern Baptists are very dogmatic.
Yes, they are.
Could you please make a quick comparison of their theology
Ooh.
with Methodism?
Well, I don't know how quick I can do that. With the Southern Baptists, it's a whole different structure of the church to begin with. It is each church has its own kind of autonomy. They have a call system, so they call their ministers, whereas it is not a connectional church. It is not. So they have a loose affiliation where they get kind of the overall direction from the mother church, right? The mother house. But in individual settings, they have more autonomy. And you'll notice Steve was saying last week or week before, Southern Baptist Convention had their big meeting in Nashville where they booted out Saddleback Church and 5 other churches where women had been in primary ministry positions, including one in Louisville, Fern Creek, United Methodist, Fern Creek Baptist, where a woman had been their senior minister for 6 years and was doing a fabulous job. But nope. And as Stephen said earlier, the leadership was feeling that the church was becoming a little too progressive for its own good. So not only did they say no women in ministry, but no women in leadership positions again. And then my favorite part, which my husband loves to tell, the next guy stands up after they've stripped all the women of any kind of leadership roles, stands up and says, "Now all you women get back in the church and get to work."
Yeah.
Oh my God, are you clueless? The other thing is there's such the Methodist Church is out of the Anglican branch. Okay, so we kind of do things differently, and we have a real emphasis on grace. We have what I like to call, the quadrilateral. So we have a 4-pronged emphasis. They don't have that. It's very scripture based, but there's no experience, tradition, the same way there is as we form our doctrine.
John Wesley attitude.
It's not the John Wesley, no, so,
I went to a Southern Baptist church for a year, maybe two, when I was in college. Every Sunday was the same. So there was always an altar call.
yeah.
You need to come down to the aisle and, get saved or recommit your life. And it was every Sunday.
Well, and they don't believe in infant baptism. They dedicate children, babies, but they don't believe in infant baptism. And they believe in what I'd call the believer's baptism, where you come and say you're ready versus God is already acting in your life.
Did you do that?
Oh, yeah,
The believers back?
12 years old, remember it well. Yes.
I did that as well. I was in a Methodist church. And that was the belief
Yeah,
when I was a child.
okay.
I wasn't baptized till I went to the pastor and asked to be baptized. So
I wonder, was it a Methodist Episcopal church or a
No, it was a
EUB?
Methodist church, but it really was kind of a community church.
Yeah.
So all those other churches that went by the wayside came there. So
And
that's
brought
how
all
we
their-
get in.
Well, and I think that's a really good point to make. When I've done new member classes, one of the things I'll go around, like we could do it in here and say, what faith were you raised in, or were you raised in a church at all? So I'd be Southern Baptist, were you raised Methodist? Both of you, Methodist? What,
I went to a Baptist church.
Baptist?
EUV.
EUB, all right, all right. Methodist, Presbyterian,
Oh,
Methodist.
I was Methodist, but I'm saying it was.
It was a loosey-goosey Methodist. There's a lot of those out there. In fact, I think they all hopefully went to the Global Methodist, so. Joy,
It was a very rural, anybody come.
Yeah.
But the pastor was that.
Baptist,
Catholic.
Catholic,
Yeah.
Catholic.
Church of Nazarene.
Oh, Nazarene, woo, all right, we're cousins, all right.
I didn't go to church, when I was in grade school and growing up, but my mother sent me to a Catholic high school.
Catholic high school,
Then you went.
Oh, yeah, that's another story.
okay. Lutheran,
Presbyterian.
Creole,
Creole,
half Methodist, half American Baptist.
okay, all right.
Methodist.
Methodist, what,
Catholic.
Catholic,
Methodist.
Methodist,
Lutheran.
and you all,
Baptist for me.
okay.
Nazarene.
Nazarene, 2 Nazarenes, wow, got some cousins in here. So, yeah, Nazarenes are in that Methodist tree. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They understand grace a little bit differently. But they have a Wesleyan connection. So,
I always say about them that they preach grace, but they don't show grace. I'm sorry.
About Windcrest.
Windcrest, yes.
Folks are not familiar, if anybody doesn't know what Windcrest is, it's a big retirement center, about a dozen or so buildings, a couple thousand people,
1800.
people there. And our outreach is just recent, I
Yes.
think, isn't it, Barb? And
Well-
are you doing a service or a Bible study there?
No service yet. That'll be in the conversation after Mark gets back.
Okay.
But yes, I'm finishing up my second Bible study at Windcrest, and we meet on Thursday mornings. Windcrest, if you don't know, is divided into neighborhoods. There are 4 neighborhoods there, and the majority of St. Andrew residents are in neighborhood 1. That was the first one that was created. But then there's a sprinkling through all the others as well. There are United Methodist wise, there are probably around 125 United Methodists in Windcrest. They have, and that's, Littleton, St. Luke, Parker, some other churches. They also have a very strong Catholic presence. They have Presbyterian church that does more of a community, service over there, and then they have an evangelical, service on Sunday evenings. So they already have a fair amount of religious presence over there. As a community of Windcrest, they will also do, like I preached at their Ash Wednesday service. They have a Good Friday service. They offer a service about every 6 weeks to, it's like a memorial service for people at Windcrest who have passed away, for their friends there. Let's see.
How many are in your study?
Yeah, my first study I had, there were about 25. This one, there's 19, and they've been very steady. I mean, it's been a long study. We started it in May, the first Thursday in May, and are finishing it this week. We're going to take the month of July off, and then we're going to start we're going to do a book study in August. I'm also connecting with Holly Creek and some of our folks at Holly Creek, and actually I'm having, I've been there for their United Women of Faith meeting. I have to catch myself on that, which was, it was fun, a great group of women. And then I'm going into 2 weeks for coffee and meeting about 25 people that live over there. So I'm trying to create, they've got a pretty well-attended Bible study over there already. So I may try to figure out something else to do. At Windcrest, we are talking about starting a service, but I'm not sure if it's going to be on Sunday mornings or if it might be a Vesper service on Wednesday. Haven't figured that out yet. Don't want to, many of our folks at Windcrest that I interact with are still very active here. So I don't know if they would, come to Sunday morning peace because they're in the choir and they're serving different things. So, but I'm enjoying it. I have had a lot of fun. I have gone to every prime time since I started, and that's a lot of fun for those of you that go to prime time. And I am working with the Colorado Alzheimer's Association, and we're going to be putting on a forum here probably in the early fall for caregivers of folks with dementia, as well as what are the signs of dementia, what are some of the advances in the care of Alzheimer's and dementia. And then I have somebody from the Colorado Alzheimer's Association who is willing to start a support group here if there's enough interest in it. So I have had, over my last several months here, several people talk to me about having spouses who are having memory care issues and needing help with how to navigate that. So there is a need for it. So that's part of what I'm doing.
Can we open it up to questions or comments people want to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What other needs are you finding in our church community with seniors?
Well, I think it's the older you get and the less able and less mobile you are, the more loneliness is an issue. I do think being in a residential area like a Windcrest, you have the opportunity to be involved. I mean, it's like being on a cruise ship over there. You got so many things to choose from. We had the hardest time just getting a room to do the Bible study, but so you have lots of things. But I do worry about some of our older members who may still be in their own homes and may not have family here. And some of, I think, loneliness and a feeling of disconnect is one of the issues. Yeah.
As I listen to your story, your testimony, if you will, I'm reminded of this book I just read about the life of Chuck Smith, the founder of the Jesus Revolution movement that was recently in movies. Theaters.
Yeah.
And he kept saying over and over through this this book, this biography written by his son, that, everything that happens in life is preparation for something else. And that's what I kept thinking of when I heard your story.
I believe that. I don't believe everything happens for a reason. I've never, there's too many things that happen. But I do believe that that if we're aware, some of the experiences that we have prepare us for things that are in the future.
Yes.
And you know, if God's in that, I'm really, I think maybe God's in everything, and I'm just kind of when am I awake to it is maybe a way to say it. So, yeah.
Before the pandemic,
Mhm.
we used to have folks called sages, or we had activities for our age range and get-togethers and hikes and just all kinds. Is that going to happen, that we have those?
My hope is that it is. A couple of the folks that had leadership roles in that are tired of leading, and I don't blame them. I know that Chuck has enough on his hands right now in his life, and you know, Joy's still willing to be my coach. But we need some new blood to step up to the plate and help with leadership. But I think there's the opportunity, absolutely, for sages to come back to life. Yes.
Yes. First of all, we're very fortunate
Yes.
to have you
Oh, thank you.
as one of our ministers, particularly with your diversity of personal experience as well as professional experience.
Thank you.
This is a congregational care issue.
Mm-hmm.
If a person has to go into a skilled facility, skilled nursing, long-term, not just for rehab, how does one receive a church visitor or visitation from the church? The same being for hospital.
Yeah.
One is in acute care in the hospital. How does one access the presence, the church presence, as far as visitation? We used to have Stephen's ministry here at the church.
Sure.
I'm not sure how active that continues to be.
Yeah.
Could you explain how people can receive visitation
Okay.
when they are beset with a skilled nursing placement or acute care in the hospital setting?
Sure. Well, I have to tell you, that's more Amy's area. However, I do help assist her some.
Okay.
I know there's a group that meets every week, I'm pretty sure, that is a caring team that tracks very carefully who's going through what. And a lot of that is calling and emailing. It's not visitation. I would say that the two things. One is, and this is from my previous experience, I'm not sure totally how St. Andrew does everything, but if you want a visit from a pastor, you need to, if you're going in and or you want a visitation after surgery or whatever it might be, you need to let that be known, particularly in a church this size. We have a person who's now homebound and bedridden, and really wanted had called Mark, but he was on his way out for the summer. Really wanted a visit from a clergy person, so I actually went out there last week. In fact, it was Thursday right before the storms. So I'm glad I wasn't out there. I'm glad I was there at 1:30, not 3:30. But anyway, so I think calling the church office is key. And you know, the other thing is, if you know of somebody who is going to have surgery, if you know somebody who's gone into the hospital, gone into long-term care, rehab, whatever it is, don't assume the church knows. Okay, so call and say, you know, Joe Smith just went in for surgery, just want to make sure you're aware of this. They will thank you, because, you know, I know, and I have to say, I think there are a lot of people here at St. Andrew who have their pulse on certainly the prayer list. But so often people assume the church is aware when they're not. So, yes, sir.
Kane is 93, and I'm in my 97th year. And I'm wondering, you know, how long can we maintain a household? Or how long is it wise to maintain a household?
That's a good question. You want me? I actually have one of the people that works with the Alzheimer's Association also works in an area that helps assess whether people need to give it up and go somewhere else. So I can give you her information. She's really good. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a hard, you know, with my parents, my mom died last November. It'll be here this November. She was went from independent to memory care to skilled nursing. And my dad had died 6 years before. I think my mom had some dementia at the time, but he was covering for her basically and doing all her medicines and doing the cooking and stuff. Well, once he passed away, we knew she couldn't be on her own. And I have to tell you, I wish my parents had moved into more of an independent living situation before my dad was gone, because my mom was more the introvert of the two, and she had a hard time meeting people and getting established there and was very lonely. And my dad was the kind of outgoing guy, and if they had gone in there together, she would have been much more connected. So, yeah.
Oh, we've got about 6 minutes left. I want to tell our Zoomers they can sure ask a question or make a comment if you'd like to. Just jump right in. Okay, thank you. Let's see, Barb, can I ask you a theological question tonight?
Great, with 6 minutes to go. Yeah.
But we do this with each of our.
Okay.
What do you think of the virgin birth and the physical resurrection? It's six.
You
six
need to
minutes.
warn any future people.
I will.
That is going to be.
Okay, all right.
Here, so, and we have folks that are on both sides.
Yes.
We're all across the spectrum, but we're just always interested in how people understand and interpret the Bible.
I have to tell you that when I came to Parker for my introduction, remember I'd flown all the way from Ohio to Colorado, and I get in the room for the conversation, and the first question I am asked is, do you believe in the Nicene Creed?
Okay.
At which point I started laughing, which was not what they wanted. And I said, are you serious? And they said, we are. And at which point I said, well, give me a hymnal, let me look at it. I don't have it memorized. So, but it was a litmus test.
Yes.
So,
No litmus test.
yeah, I flunked that one, but they were stuck with me anyway. I don't know. Virgin birth. I look at scripture a lot as story, okay? And what is the scripture really trying to tell us here? Did we get hung up in did this really happen this way? Or what is God trying to tell us in this experience? I have an easier time with physical resurrection. I just do, because, raised Southern Baptist, grown up in it. I can visualize it for myself. However, I don't think that should hold you back from deep faith in Jesus Christ if you can't go there. Does that make sense? One last story about me, which will kind of bring this full circle with this. I experienced abuse as a kid from a neighbor, sexual abuse. I don't mind talking about it now because I'm 69 years old almost. But it happened over a 2-year period when I was 12 and 13. So it affected my life in a lot of different ways. But when my daughter was in kindergarten, no, take that back, in preschool, and they had a parent speaker that night, and they were talking about childhood sexual abuse, and the more they talked, the more my ears were ringing, to the point where I couldn't hear them. And that's when I realized what had happened to me, because I didn't know, that's what it was. Then so long story short, I go into therapy. So I'd had a pretty hard therapy session, and this was before I went into ministry or anything. And I was sitting in the car waiting for my daughter to get out of school. She was in 4th grade at the time. And so it was the winter and the sun was coming in. So I put my seat back a little and shut my eyes. And all of a sudden I had this vision that I was at the foot of the cross and I was crying. And I was crying for Jesus. And I looked up and Jesus was on the cross and he was looking down and crying for me. It was the most powerful experience I've ever had in terms of my faith. And in that moment, I had, and since then, I've had no doubt that, for me, God, faith, Jesus, resurrection, crucifixion, all of those are what happened to us. And God is there with us in those moments, weeping, caring for us, and walking us through. Yeah, so it was an amazing vision for me. My whole call has, I'm one of those people, I've always thought, are you just a weirdo? But, dreams, visions, that stuff doesn't really happen much anymore because I'm really settled in who I am now. But as a young person, I had those kind of revelation moments. I always say God speaks to me in the shower. So,
Yeah.
and it's like those moments when you're just spaced out and you're not even present, you're just sort of there. And then, it allows the holy presence in you. So, yeah.
What a gift you are to us.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I have to tell you, I said to Rev Mark, because I retired last June. I was so tired from the pandemic. and I thought, I'm going to be 68. I've been at this for 30 years. It's time to say good night. I rest for 3 or 4 months. We church shop. We look at a couple places and we come to St. Andrew and I go, oh, this is good. So we were attending probably for 2 months, and then I got an email from Rev Mark and he says, you want to have coffee? Have you all ever had that experience? And so anyway, I go, sure. So we have coffee and, we're talking a little bit and talking about different things. And he said to me, so are you really retired? I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, and then he explained the senior adults and the Windcrest and all that. And I said, well, can I think about it? So I thought about it a little bit and called him back and said, part-time, 20 hours a week, which kind of wavers, but anyway, I told him about 6 weeks after I started, I said, I have to tell you, I am having so much fun. I'm having so much fun. I said, I'm not in charge of anything. I don't have to make big decisions. And I can just be with people and study together and pray together and have fun together. And, my little group at Windcrest, we are having so much fun together and they keep me on my toes. First of all, they do their homework. So, I got to come prepared because they've read it all. And they're just delightful people, and I'm having a lot of fun. So yeah, it's a great staff. You got a great staff here, great church, and I just feel I got my pride colors on here today. Couldn't do that at Parker. Woohoo! So I am so happy. So
Well, we are out of time, but
Thank you.
for sharing your story with us. Thank the Lord for you being with us and ask him to bless you in your career and your family. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
See
Thank
next
you.
week.
Bye.
We're not here next week.
We're not here next